The suitcase hit the porch so hard the latch snapped, and tiny white socks spilled into the rain. Mara didn't pick them up. She pointed at Eli with the hand that still wore her wedding ring and said, "If you touch me right now, I'll remember your face for the rest of my life as the face of the man who let our daughter die." Then she turned, white with grief, and walked into the storm, while he stood there with his stitches tearing open under his shirt, and watched his wife leave him forever. If stories like this get under your skin, subscribe, like the video, and tell me where you're watching from before we begin. Because this one doesn't just hurt, it stays. "Please," Eli shouted, stumbling off the porch. "Mara, listen to me. I wasn't there because the contract mattered more." Her voice cracked so hard it barely sounded human. "Because I was alone when they put our daughter in my arms and she was already cold." "That's not what happened." She laughed once. It wasn't laughter. It was what a heart sounds like when it rips in public. "I saw the message, Eli. I saw what you sent. Do what you have to do. I can't lose tonight." Do you know what the doctor said after he showed me that? He said he was sorry I had to hear the truth like this. Eli felt the world tilt. "What doctor?" But she was already backing away from him, one hand over her mouth, the other clutching the tiny socks she hadn't meant to drop. Their daughter's socks. Hope's socks. The ones Mara had packed in her hospital bag because she'd spent 6 months imagining little feet kicking under blankets. At the end of the drive, she stopped, not to forgive him, not even to look at him, just to say the sentence that hollowed out the next 7 years of his life. "If you loved us at all, you won't come after me." Then she disappeared into the rain. Eli did go after her. For 6 months, he went after her in every legal, broken, half-crazy way a man can. He called every friend she had ever trusted. He paid private investigators with money he didn't have. He drove 2 states over because someone swore they'd seen her at a bus station wearing his old denim jacket. He slept in his truck outside her aunt's apartment for 3 nights, only to learn she'd never been there. And every time he got close, Mara was gone again. By the end of that year, all he had left was the house, the wedding ring she had mailed back in an empty envelope, and the nursery. He couldn't touch the nursery. The crib stayed by the window. The moon and stars mobile hung exactly where she had left it. One tiny yellow blanket was still folded over the arm of the rocking chair. Sometimes, after too much silence, he would stand in the doorway and stare at that room until sunrise. Like punishment was the only thing still connecting him to the 2 people he had lost in the same week. The town moved on faster than he did. They remembered the ugly parts. The funeral, Mara's mother slapping him in the church parking lot. The whisper that he'd chosen work over the birth. The rumor that he'd been seen holding some woman outside the hospital while his wife screamed for him upstairs. No one remembered the facts. That he had been pulled unconscious from a collapsed scaffold 15 minutes from the hospital. That he had woken up asking for his wife. That his first step out of the ambulance had been straight into hell. 7 years later, on a November night so cold it made the windows ache, someone started pounding on his front door. Not knocking, pounding. Eli was halfway across the room before the second hit. He opened the door, ready for anything. A drunk, a debt collector, a wreck on the road. Instead, Mara stood under the porch light in a soaked gray coat, barefoot, hair plastered to her face, crying so hard she could barely breathe. For one full second, Eli forgot what gravity was. She looked older, sharper in some places, more fragile in others. Her cheekbone was bruised purple. Her lower lip was split. Rain trembled on her eyelashes, and she looked at him like a stranger. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know this is insane. I know I shouldn't be here." His hand tightened on the door. "Mara." She flinched when he said her name, like something deep inside her recognized the sound before the rest of her did. "I found this address in my coat," she said, pulling a damp piece of paper from her fist. "It was stitched into the lining. I don't know who put it there. I don't know why I drove here. I don't even—" Her voice broke. "I don't even know why I started crying the second I saw your porch." Eli looked at the paper. His address, written in her handwriting. He lifted his eyes back to her slowly. "What do you mean you don't know why?" She swallowed, shivering violently now. 3 days ago, I woke up in a hospital after a car accident. They said I lost chunks of memory, mostly recent years, faces, places. I remember my childhood house, my father's hands, a yellow swing set. But the last 7 years, she pressed her palm against her temple. They're like broken glass. I keep reaching for them, and all I get is pain. 7 years. Eli felt something cold move through his chest. "What names do you remember?" he asked. She hesitated. "Mine." "And?" Her eyes filled again. "A doctor. Nathan." The name landed like a blade. Dr. Nathan Cole. The man who had delivered hope. The man who had shown Mara that message. The man who had stood beside her at the funeral with a hand on her shoulder, looking at Eli with calm eyes that never matched the sorrow on his face. Eli stepped back from the doorway. "Get inside." She stared at him. "You know me." He almost laughed at the cruelty of that sentence. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I know you." Mara crossed the threshold and stopped dead in the hallway. People think memory lives in the head. Sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes it lives in wood grain, in soap, in winter light falling across a floor you once danced on in socks. She touched the wall beside the staircase with shaking fingers, and fresh tears spilled down her face. "I've been here before." "Yes." Her breathing got faster. "Why does this hurt?" "Because you painted this wall with me at 2 in the morning and got green paint on your nose," he thought. "Because you kissed me right there when the power went out. Because you left part of yourself in this house and spent 7 years being taught to call it a mistake." Instead, he said, "Sit down before you fall down." He took her into the kitchen, wrapped her in a blanket, set a mug of tea in her hands. The domesticity of it almost destroyed him. Mara sitting at his table again. Mara blowing on steam. Mara in his house while every old wound woke up at once. Her gaze drifted to the counter, to a framed photograph. Her hand started trembling before she even picked it up. It was their wedding picture. Sunlight, wildflowers. Eli laughing at something she had whispered. Mara looking straight at him with the kind of love that makes everyone else in the room irrelevant. She lifted the frame like it might burn her. "That's me." "Yes." "And that's—" He couldn't make his voice work for a second. "That's me."
She looked from the picture to his face and back again. "No." He said nothing. "No!" She stood too fast, chair scraping. "No, that's not possible. I would know if I was married." "You were." "Were?" His silence said too much. Her knees buckled. Eli caught her before she hit the floor, and the second his hands touched her arms, both of them froze. Mara's eyes widened. She didn't pull away. Instead, she whispered, with the terrified wonder of someone hearing a song from another life, "You held me like this before." His jaw locked. 1,000 times. She made a sound so small it barely existed. Then she started crying into his shirt like her body had remembered him even if her mind hadn't. He should have stepped back. He should have protected what was left of himself. Instead, he held her tighter. An hour later, when the shaking stopped, she sat curled on the couch while he built the fire higher. "Tell me the truth," she said. "All of it. Even if it makes me hate you." Eli stared into the flames. "I don't think you came here for lies." So he told her. He told her about hope, about the collapsed scaffold,
About waking up in the ambulance with blood in his mouth and panic in his chest. About getting to the hospital too late, seeing Nathan at the end of the hall, and then seeing Mara holding a blanket that was much too still. He told her about the text Nathan showed her. "Did you send it?" she asked, already afraid of the answer. "No." Her fingers tightened around the blanket. "Then why did I believe it?" "Because you had just lost our daughter." He looked at her then, and there was no anger left in him, only exhaustion. Because grief is a weapon when it lands in the wrong hands. Because I wasn't there when you needed me most. And sometimes that's enough to make any lie look true. She covered her mouth. "Our daughter," she whispered, like the words had teeth. "Her name was Hope?" Eli nodded. For a long moment, Mara couldn't speak. Then she looked around the room as if the walls themselves were listening. "Did I leave that same night?" "After the funeral." "Did you try to stop me?" He almost smiled. "I was stupid enough to think truth had a chance if I said it loud enough." Mara's eyes closed. "I told you not to come after me." "You remember that?" "No." Her face crumpled. "But it sounds like something a person says when they want pain to have somewhere to go."
The phone rang. Both of them jerked. Mara looked at the screen on the table and went pale. Nathan. The name flashed across the glass like a threat. She didn't answer. It rang again and again. Then a message lit up underneath. "Where are you? You're confused. Let me help you." Eli saw the bruise on her cheek again, the split lip, the way her shoulders folded inward at the sight of that name. "Did he do that to you?" She stared at the floor. That was answer enough. When the knocking came 20 minutes later, it was controlled, almost polite. Nathan Cole stood on the porch in a navy coat, hair neat, face worried, in exactly the way that makes dangerous men look safest. He smiled when he saw Mara. He did not smile when he saw Eli behind her. "There you are," he said softly, as if he had found a misplaced child. "You gave everyone a scare." Mara didn't move. Nathan noticed the blanket around her shoulders, the firelight, the distance between her and the door. His eyes sharpened. "Come home," he said. "Home?" Mara repeated. "Where is that?" A beat. Nathan recovered beautifully. You're overwhelmed. The accident scrambled things. That's normal. But showing up here? He let his gaze slide to Eli. That's not safe. Eli stepped forward. You don't get to say that word in my house. Nathan's expression stayed calm. She doesn't remember what happened between you two. No, Eli said. That was your favorite part. Mara turned to Nathan. Why do I have his address stitched inside my coat? For the first time, Nathan hesitated. Only half a second, but Eli saw it. Nathan smiled again. Trauma makes people cling to old symbols, old places. That doesn't mean they're good for you. Mara whispered, Were we married? Nathan exhaled as though burdened by other people's damage. A long time ago. Briefly. It ended badly. Why didn't you tell me? You've been fragile. The word hit her like an insult she had heard too many times. Nathan took one step toward her. Mara, come with me. Eli watched her face, the fear, the confusion, the little sparks trying to form behind the wreckage. Then Mara asked the one question that changed everything. If he's just a mistake, she said, why do I feel like I can breathe in this house for the first time in years? Nathan's mask slipped. It was small, but it was there. A flash of something ugly and possessive and furious. I'm trying to help you, he said. Eli moved beside her. Then tell her what happened the night Hope died. Nathan looked at Mara, not Eli. He wasn't there. That's not what I asked. Nathan's jaw ticked once. Mara took a step back from him, then another. I'm not going with you tonight. Nathan's eyes went flat. Think very carefully before you do this. And just like that, the gentle doctor disappeared, and a man who had spent 7 years controlling the shape of her reality stood exposed in the porch light. Mara saw it too. Her breath caught. Nathan softened again, but too late. I'll come back tomorrow, he said quietly, when you're ready to be reasonable. When he turned away, Eli saw Mara's fingers digging so hard into the blanket that her knuckles went white. That night, she couldn't sleep. At 2 a.m, Eli found her standing outside the nursery. The door was open. Moonlight washed over the crib, the mobile, the yellow blanket, the stuffed rabbit with one bent ear. Mara had both hands pressed over her mouth. You kept it, she whispered. Eli leaned against the hallway wall because his legs didn't trust him. I tried to clean it once, he said. I made it to the doorway. Then I sat on the floor for 3 hours and couldn't move. Mara stepped inside like she was entering sacred ground. Her fingertips brushed the edge of the crib, then the rocking chair. She stared at the blanket. And suddenly she folded in half, with a sound no one should ever make twice in one lifetime. I remember this room. Eli went rigid. She was shaking now, words tearing out between sobs. Yellow stars. I wanted yellow stars because I said pink felt like pressure. I remember laughing because you built the crib backwards the first time and swore at it so hard I threw a pillow at your head. Eli couldn't speak. I remember her kicking, Mara choked out. I remember being afraid to love her too much because it felt like tempting fate. Then she looked at him with the horror of memory breaking through. I remember being alone. The sentence hit him harder than blame ever had. He crossed the room slowly. Mara. No, don't. She wiped at her face. If you touch me right now, I might remember everything at once.
But when her knees gave out, she still reached for him. By morning, she remembered pieces: the hospital light, Nathan's face, Hope's tiny hand, and one thing that made Eli's blood run cold: the way Nathan had leaned in after the delivery and said, "You need to know what kind of man your husband really is." Eli drove her to the cemetery after sunrise. Hope's grave sat under an old maple tree at the far edge of the hill. Small, white, merciless. Mara stopped 3 steps away, as if her body recognized the place before the rest of her did. Eli said nothing. That was the thing about real grief. It doesn't need narration. Mara knelt in the frost and stared at the stone. Hope Turner, beloved daughter, held for a moment, loved forever. Her hand hovered over the engraving and then dropped as if it was too heavy to lift. "I never came back," she said. Eli looked out over the graves because looking at her was unbearable. "No. I left her here." "You left everything." She closed her eyes. "Do you hate me?" He answered honestly. "There were days I tried to." She nodded like she deserved that. Then she whispered, "I think I was drugged." He turned. "My head." She pressed her temple. "For years, maybe. I have flashes of sleeping too much, forgetting whole weeks. Nathan saying the medication would help with panic. Nathan saying memory was dangerous for me. Nathan saying grief rewrites love, and I'd thank him one day for helping me survive it." Eli's hands curled into fists. Mara looked at the grave again. What if he kept me broken on purpose? That was the moment Eli stopped wanting answers and started wanting war. Back at the house, he brought down the box he had hidden in the attic 7 years ago. Inside were copies of construction reports, hospital timestamps, voicemails, unanswered letters, and every scrap of proof he had ever collected while trying to understand how the worst night of their lives had been turned into a weapon. Mara sat on the floor beside him as he opened it. At the bottom was a sealed envelope. Eli stared at it. "I never opened this." "Why not?" "It came 3 years after you left. No return address. I thought if it was from you and it said you were happy, I wouldn't survive reading it." Mara turned the envelope over. Her own handwriting stared back at both of them. "For Eli. If I ever forget again, let this reach him." Her fingers shook so badly she could barely tear it open. Inside was 1 page. "Eli. If this gets to you, then I was stronger for 5 minutes than he expected. I don't know how many times I've remembered and lost you." I don't know what he's giving me, but every time I start asking questions, I disappear inside my own head again. I found your address in an old tax form and stitched it into my coat. If I ever wake up and don't know where to go, maybe some part of me will still come home. I am afraid of the man who says he saved me. If I make it back to you, do not trust my memory before you trust my tears." Mara stopped reading because she couldn't breathe. Eli closed his eyes. Some part of her had been fighting the whole time. Some part of her had been trying to crawl back through 7 years of chemical fog and fear, one hidden stitch at a time. The front window exploded. Glass sprayed across the room. Mara screamed. Eli pulled her down just as a brick skidded across the hardwood. Wrapped around it was a note. "You should have come home when I asked. Nathan." Everything after that moved fast. Police took the report and did very little. Nathan was respected. Wealthy donors shook his hand. His name was on hospital wings and charity boards. Men like that don't look dangerous until they've already decided you don't matter. But Mara was done disappearing. She told Eli about a hospital gala the following night. Nathan would be there. So would half the town. If he still believed he owned the story, that was where he would be careless enough to prove it. Too risky, Eli said. He took 7 years from me. That's exactly why it's risky. She stepped closer, bruised, exhausted, furious now in a way that finally looked alive. You spent 7 years being buried alive in this town, she said. Everyone looked at you like you abandoned us. I did that. He did that through me. I'm not letting him keep the ending, too. At the gala, Nathan looked untouchable. Black tuxedo, easy smile, one hand around a champagne glass. The room glowed gold around him, and every person who had ever whispered Eli's name like gossip was there beneath the chandeliers, pretending evil only arrives looking evil. Mara walked in on Eli's arm. The room changed temperature. Heads turned. Conversations snagged. Someone actually dropped a fork. Nathan saw them and went still. Then he smiled. It was the cruelest thing Eli had ever seen. Mara, Nathan said, approaching with practiced concern. You shouldn't be here. She looked at him with eerie calm. I wanted to hear you explain it one more time. His eyes flicked to Eli. You've confused her. Mara leaned in, almost intimate. Then unconfuse me. Tell me why I had to be medicated for 7 years. Tell me why my letters disappeared. Tell me why I had my ex-husband's address stitched into my coat like an escape plan. Nathan's face barely changed, but Eli saw the calculation. He lowered his voice. Because every time you started remembering him, you unraveled. I did what I had to do. Mara whispered, Because you loved me? No, he said, and the ugliness finally showed. Because I chose you, and I don't lose what I choose. Eli moved, but Mara's hand found his wrist first. Wait. Nathan mistook that for weakness. He stepped closer. Do you think he would have survived what you became after Hope? He couldn't even arrive on time to say goodbye to his daughter. I was the one who stayed. I was the one who cleaned up what he left behind. Mara's mouth trembled. Did you forge the message? Nathan looked straight into her face and made the mistake arrogant men always make when they believe the room belongs to them. Yes. Eli heard gasps, not from them, from the speakers above the ballroom. Nathan's voice had just filled the entire room. Mara had gone to the audio booth 10 minutes earlier while Eli distracted security. The microphone clipped inside her dress was now feeding every donor, every doctor, every whispering town liar the confession they had never expected to hear. Nathan looked up at the ceiling, stunned. The recording continued. Yes, I forged it. Because grief made you soft enough to shape. Because he would always stand between you and the life you should have had with me. The ballroom erupted. Someone shouted for security. Someone else started filming. Nathan lunged for Mara, and in front of all the polished people who had once watched Eli be broken in silence, Nathan Cole finally became exactly what he was. Violent. Desperate. Caught. Eli intercepted him hard enough to send both of them crashing into a table. Glass shattered. Women screamed. Nathan swung wild, years of control gone in 1 second of public exposure.
Eli took the hit, tasted blood, and hit him back once. Only once. Because Mara was the one who had to finish this. And she did. Standing over the wreckage, hair loose, bruise visible, voice shaking but clear, Mara looked around the room and said, 7 years ago, you all watched me bury my child and walk away from the wrong man. Tonight, you can watch me tell the truth. He didn't save me. He stole me. Silence. The heavy kind. The kind that forces shame to finally show its face. Then the police moved. Nathan started shouting about instability, trauma, false memory, every polished lie he had used for years. No one was listening anymore. Not when Mara reached for Eli in front of everyone.
Not when Eli, bleeding from the mouth and shaking with rage he had waited 7 years to spend, still touched her like something breakable had come back from the dead. 3 months later, winter broke. The porch had been repaired, the broken window replaced. The nursery door was still there, but the room had changed. Not erased, never erased, just changed. The crib was gone. In its place stood a piano Mara barely remembered how to play, and a shelf of children's books they kept because grief doesn't stop being love just because time passes. Nathan was awaiting trial. The town had become very polite. Funny how quickly people rediscover manners when the truth embarrasses them. Eli was on the porch at sunset when he heard footsteps behind him. Mara. No coat this time, no bruises, no fear trying to swallow her whole. She sat beside him on the swing and looked out at the road she had once disappeared down. I remember more every day, she said. He nodded. Is it getting easier? No. A small, honest smile. Just clearer. They sat in silence for a while. The good kind. The earned kind. Then Mara reached into her pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. His address. The one she had stitched into her coat. She placed it in his hand. I think some part of me loved you, even when the rest of me was lost. Eli looked at the paper for a long time, then at her. You don't owe me coming back, he said quietly. Not out of guilt, not out of history, not because of what he did. Her eyes filled, but she didn't look away. I'm not here because he stole 7 years from me, she whispered. I'm here because even after he did, my feet still brought me home. For the first time in 7 years, Eli let himself believe that some broken things do not return as ruins. Sometimes they return as truth. Sometimes truth cries on your doorstep in the rain because love hid directions inside the seams. Mara leaned her head on his shoulder. He covered her hand with his, and when the porch light came on above them, neither of them flinched. Some people lose each other because love ends. Some people lose each other because lies get there first. But when the door finally opened again, it wasn't memory that brought her back. It was the part of her heart no one could drug, silence, or steal. If you were Eli, would you have opened the door?